The massive space station called Nexus Prime hung in the darkness between stars like a giant metal city. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports every day. Today was special. Today, humans and the powerful Vorthak Empire would try to make peace. Hanna walked through the long corridors of the station. Her steps were quiet and careful. She was small, even for a human woman. At just 5 feet tall, she looked tiny next to the other beings moving through the halls. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple style. Her dark eyes watched everything around her. Behind her walked 3 other humans. Park Doha was the military commander. He was tall and strong, with gray hair and serious eyes. Kim Ji-won was an engineer with bright eyes and quick hands. Choi Min-ho was their pilot. He was young and sometimes got angry too fast. They were heading to the main meeting room where the peace talks would begin. Hanna carried a small bag with her papers and notes. She had spent months preparing for this day. She knew more about the Vorthak than almost any other human alive. The Vorthak Empire ruled over many worlds. They were warriors who believed strength was the most important thing. They were much bigger than humans. Most Vorthak stood nearly 8 feet tall. Their skin looked like armor made of hard shell. Their hands ended in sharp claws. Their faces had no hair, and their eyes were like black stones. The humans had never fought a war with the Vorthak, but the aliens kept moving closer to human space. They took over planets and made the people there serve them. Human leaders were worried. They did not want to fight such a powerful enemy, so they decided to try talking first. That was why Hanna was here. She was not just a diplomat who talked to aliens. She was also an expert on how different alien races thought and acted. The human government had chosen her carefully for this job. As they reached the meeting room, Hanna could hear loud voices inside. The Vorthak had arrived first. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The room was huge with a long table in the middle. On one side sat 5 Vorthak warriors. They were even bigger than Hanna had expected. Their armor made clicking sounds when they moved. The smell in the room was strange, like metal and something wild. The biggest Vorthak sat at the center. This was Commander Thekvar. His shell armor was decorated with marks that showed his many battles. Scars covered his arms and face. When he saw the humans enter, his black eyes fixed on Hanna. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The Vorthak stared at the human team. Then Commander Thekvar started to laugh. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. "This is a joke," he said in heavily accented English. His voice was deep and rough. The humans send a child to talk with warriors. The other Vorthak joined in the laughter. One of them, a younger warrior with fresh scars, pointed at Hanna. "Look at her. She is smaller than our younglings. Does she even know how to fight?" Hanna said nothing. She walked to her chair and sat down. She placed her bag on the table and pulled out her papers. Her face showed no emotion. Park Doha stepped forward. "I am Commander Park Doha of the Human Space Navy. This is our diplomatic team. We are here to discuss peace between our peoples." Commander Thekvar waved one clawed hand. "Peace. Yes, we can discuss this. But first, answer my question. Why do you bring this weak little creature to speak with us? Are you trying to insult the Vorthak Empire?" "Hanna is our best expert on your culture," Park Doha replied. "She has studied your people for many years." Another Vorthak warrior leaned forward. This one had a broken horn on his head. "Studied us. From where? From her safe little human world. Has she ever seen real battle? Has she ever faced death?" Hanna finally looked up from her papers. She met the warrior's eyes calmly. "I have read the reports of your victories on Kelmar, Prime, Zeridian 4, and the outer colonies. Very impressive." The Vorthak looked surprised that she knew those battle names. But Commander Thekvar just snorted. "Anyone can read reports. Fighting is different. You look like you would break if someone looked at you too hard." More laughter filled the room. Kim Ji-won shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable. Choi Min-ho's hands turned into fists, but he stayed quiet. "Perhaps," said another Vorthak with a smooth voice. This was Ambassador Kelthon. He was older than the others and wore robes instead of armor. Perhaps the humans do not understand our ways. Among the Vorthak, only the strong may speak for their people. The weak serve the strong. This is natural law. We understand your customs, Hana said quietly. Just as we understand that you have conquered 18 different worlds in the past 10 years. 19, Commander Tekvar corrected with pride. We took the Hearthen system last month. Their warriors fought well, but they were not strong enough. Hana made a note on her paper. Yes, 19. Thank you for the correction. This seemed to annoy the commander. You write our victories in your little book like a clerk. Do you think your words and numbers mean anything to warriors? I think information has its own kind of power, Hana replied. The youngest Vorthak warrior slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the room. Power comes from strength, from weapons and armor and the will to use them, not from books and papers. Grixtal speaks truth, Commander Tekvar said, nodding to the young warrior. This little human understands nothing. How can we make agreements with beings who send weaklings to represent them? Grixtal stood up. He was enormous even for a Vorthak. His armor was polished and perfect. Weapons hung from his belt. Battle scars covered his arms like decorations. I have defeated champions from 12 different worlds. I have never lost a fight. And you humans send us this tiny creature who looks afraid of her own shadow. Hana looked up at him. Next to Grixtal, she seemed impossibly small. I am not afraid, she said simply. No, Grixtal laughed. Maybe you are just too stupid to be afraid. The other Vorthak joined in the laughter again. Commander Tekvar shook his head. This meeting is pointless. How can we respect a species that values weakness over strength? Perhaps humans are not ready to deal with real warriors. Park Doha started to speak, but Hana held up one small hand. He stopped, surprised. You are right about one thing, Hana said to the commander. Strength matters in your culture, but you might be wrong about what real strength looks like. Commander Tekvar leaned back in his chair. Oh, tell me, little human, what does strength look like? Hana gathered her papers and put them back in her bag. She stood up slowly. Even standing, she barely came up to Grixtal's chest. I suppose we will find out, she said. The room fell quiet. Something in her voice made even the Vorthak pause. For just a moment, her calm, dark eyes seemed to hold secrets that none of them understood. Then the moment passed. Commander Tekvar waved his hand dismissively. Tomorrow we will continue this discussion. Perhaps by then the humans will send someone more suitable to speak with warriors. As the teams filed out of the meeting room, Hana walked last. She moved, quietly, but her eyes took in everything. She noticed how each Vorthak walked. She saw which weapons they carried. She watched how they treated each other. Kim Ji-won caught up with her in the corridor. Hana, are you okay? They were really cruel in there. They were being themselves, Hana replied. That is exactly what I needed to see. Behind them, they could hear the Vorthak still laughing and talking loudly about the strange, weak humans who sent children to do adult work. They had no idea that the small woman they mocked was taking notes on everything they did. The next morning brought bad news. The peace talks were going nowhere fast. The Vorthak sat on their side of the table like stone walls. Every human suggestion was met with harsh laughter or angry words. Commander Tekvar had a list of demands. The humans must give up 3 star systems near Vorthak space. They must pay tribute every year with food, metals, and technology. Human ships could not enter certain areas without Vorthak permission. These are not negotiations, Park Doha said firmly. These are surrender terms. Call them what you like, Commander Tekvar replied. The strong make demands. The weak accept them. This is how the universe works. Hana sat quietly through most of the morning session. She watched and listened. She wrote notes in her small book. The Vorthak noticed her writing and made jokes about it. Look, the little human is drawing pictures, said one warrior with a broken tooth. Maybe she will make a nice story for children about the big scary aliens. The others laughed. Grixtal, the huge young warrior, leaned across the table. What are you writing, tiny one? Are you writing down how afraid you are? Hana looked up at him. I am writing down everything you say and do. It helps me understand your culture better. Our culture is simple, Grixtal said. The strong rule. The weak serve. What is hard to understand about that? Nothing is hard to understand, Hana replied. But simple things can still be interesting to study. Grixtal laughed loudly. She thinks we are bugs under a glass for her to study. This little creature believes she can understand warriors by watching us talk. Ambassador Kelthon, the older Vorthak in robes, shook his head sadly. Perhaps humans are not ready for contact with advanced civilizations. Your species seems very naive about the realities of power. The morning session ended badly. The humans returned to their quarters for lunch. Their rooms were nice but small. The station gave visiting diplomats comfortable places to stay but nothing fancy. Kim Ji-won sat down hard in her chair. This is impossible. They will not listen to anything we say. They just want us to give up and accept their terms. That is exactly what they want, Park Do-ha agreed. He looked tired and frustrated. But we cannot go back to Earth with a deal like that. The government would never accept it. Choi Min-ho was pacing back and forth. His face was red with anger. Did you hear how they talked to us? Especially to Hana. They treated her like dirt. They treated all of us badly, Park Do-ha said. But you are right. They seem to especially dislike having Hana here. All three men looked at Hana. She was sitting by the window, still writing in her notebook. She seemed calm and unbothered by the morning's events. Hana, Kim Ji-won said gently. How are you feeling about all this? I know it must be hard to listen to them say such cruel things. Hana looked up from her writing. They are not being cruel. They are being honest about what they believe. In their culture, physical strength is everything. To them, I appear weak, so they treat me the way their culture says weak things should be treated. But that does not make it right, Choi Min-ho said angrily. Right and wrong are human ideas, Hana replied. The Vorthak have different ideas. If we want to make peace with them, we need to understand how they think. Park Do-ha sat down across from her. What do you think we should do? The talks are not going well. Maybe we should ask Earth to send a different team. A different team would face the same problems, Hana said, unless Earth wants to send someone who can beat a Vorthak warrior in hand-to-hand combat. Is that what it would take? Kim Ji-won asked. Hana closed her notebook and looked at her three companions. I have been studying Vorthak culture for 2 years. I have read every report, watched every video, analyzed every piece of data we have about them. Their entire society is built around the idea that might makes right. So what do we do? Park Do-ha asked. Before Hana could answer, there was a loud knock on their door. Park Do-ha went to open it. A tall Vorthak warrior stood in the hallway. This was not one of the warriors from the morning session. This one was bigger, older, and wore more decorations on his armor. I am General Vexmar, the warrior said in a voice like thunder. I command all Vorthak forces in this region of space. I want to see your pathetic excuse for a diplomatic team. Park Do-ha stepped back to let the general enter. General Vexmar had to duck his head to fit through the doorway. He was the largest Vorthak any of the humans had ever seen. Scars covered his face and arms. His armor was black metal decorated with symbols of many victories. The general looked around the room until his eyes found Hana. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he started laughing. This is even worse than I was told, he said. Commander, Thekvar sent me a message saying the humans had sent a child to negotiate with us. I thought he was joking. Hana stood up slowly. Next to the general, she looked like a toy soldier next to a real one. You are General Vexmar, she said politely. Your victory at the Battle of Crimson Nebula was very impressive. 17 enemy ships destroyed with only minor losses to your own fleet. The general stopped laughing. He looked surprised that she knew about that battle. You have heard of my victories, he said. I have studied all of them, Hana replied. Your tactics show great skill and experience. For a moment the general seemed almost pleased by her words. Then he shook his head angrily. Pretty words from a weak little creature, he growled. But words mean nothing without strength to back them up. How can my people respect a species that sends weaklings to speak for them? Perhaps strength comes in different forms, Hana suggested quietly. General Vexmar laughed again, but this time it was not a happy sound. There is only one kind of strength that matters. The strength to defeat your enemies in battle. The strength to take what you want and keep what you have. Everything else is just talk. He walked over to a small table where the humans kept some supplies. With one hand he crushed a metal water container like it was made of paper. This is strength, he said, dropping the twisted metal. Can your diplomacy do that? No, Hana admitted. But diplomacy can do other things. Like what? The general demanded. Like help different peoples find ways to live together without destroying each other. General Vexmar snorted with disgust. Foolish human thinking. The strong do not need to live with the weak. The strong rule and the weak serve. This is the natural order. He walked to the door, then turned back to face the humans. I am ending these useless talks, he announced. Humans are too weak to be worth our time. You will accept our terms or face the consequences. Wait, Park Doha called out. We still have things to discuss. There is nothing to discuss, the general replied. A species that sends children to do adult work does not deserve to be treated as equals. Tomorrow I will give you our final offer. Accept it or we will take what we want by force. The door slammed shut behind him. The four humans stood in silence for a moment. Well, Kim Jawan said finally. That went even worse than this morning. Choi, Mino kicked his chair in frustration. They will not even listen to us. How can we make peace with people who only understand violence? Park Doha sat down heavily. Maybe we should contact Earth. Tell them the mission has failed. The mission has not failed yet, Hana said quietly. The three men looked at her. She was staring out the window at the stars beyond the station. Hana, Park Doha said carefully, I know you have worked hard to prepare for this, but some things cannot be solved with study and preparation. Hana turned away from the window. Her dark eyes were thoughtful. You are right, she said. Some problems require a different kind of solution. Something in her voice made the others pause. She sounded different somehow, less like a diplomat and more like something else, something they had not seen before. What kind of solution? Kim Jiwon asked. Hana picked up her notebook and held it close. The kind the Vorthak will understand, she said. The next morning brought the end of everything. General Vexmar entered the meeting room like a storm. His heavy boots made the floor shake with each step. Behind him walked Commander Thekvar and the other Vorthak warriors. The humans were already seated at the table. Park Doha looked tired. Kim Jiwon seemed nervous. Choi Minho was angry as usual. Hana sat quietly with her notebook closed in front of her. General Vexmar did not sit down. He stood at the head of the table like a judge about to give a sentence. I have thought about this situation all night, he announced. The Vorthak Empire has wasted too much time on these useless talks. Humans are clearly too weak to be our equals. General, Park Doha began, but Vexmar cut him off with a wave of his massive hand. I am not finished speaking, the general growled. Your species disappoints me. You send diplomats instead of warriors. You offer words instead of strength. You show weakness where you should show power. Ambassador Kelthon nodded in agreement. The general speaks wisdom. How can we make treaties with beings who do not understand the most basic laws of nature? What laws? Park Doha asked. That the strong rule and the weak serve, Commander Thekvar replied. This is true everywhere in the galaxy. Only humans seem confused about this simple fact. General Vexmar began pacing behind the Vorthak side of the table. His armor made clicking sounds as he moved. I have a solution, he said. A way to settle this matter once and for all. The Vorthak Empire challenges humanity to trial by combat. The humans looked at each other in shock. They had read about trial by combat in their studies of Vorthak culture, but they never thought it would actually happen. Single combat between champions, the general continued. If your champion wins, we will negotiate as equals. If our champion wins, humanity accepts our terms without question. Park Doha stood up slowly. General, we came here to talk, not to fight. Talk is for equals, General Vexmar replied. You must prove you are our equals before we will listen to your words. Grixtal, the huge young warrior, stepped forward. His armor gleamed in the room's lights. Weapons hung from his belt like deadly ornaments. I will be the Vorthak champion, he announced proudly. I have defeated warriors from 12 different worlds. I have never lost a fight. I have never even been wounded in combat. The other Vorthak warriors nodded with respect. Grixtal was famous throughout their empire. Stories of his victories were told on every Vorthak world. He killed the champion of Zeltar with his bare hands, Commander Thekvar said. He defeated 3 Chronic berserkers at the same time. He broke the Sword Saint of Merida in half. Kim Jiwan whispered to Park Doha. We cannot accept this. No human could fight someone like that. Park Doha nodded. He was about to refuse the challenge when a quiet voice spoke up. I accept. Everyone in the room turned to stare at Hana. She was still sitting calmly at the table. Her small hands were folded on top of her closed notebook. The room fell completely silent. Even General Vexmar stopped pacing. He looked at the tiny human woman like he could not believe what he had heard. What did you say? He asked. I said I accept the challenge, Hana replied. She stood up slowly. Next to the towering Vorthak warriors, she looked impossibly small. Grixtal stared down at her. Then he began to laugh. It started as a chuckle but grew into loud laughter that filled the whole room. The other Vorthak joined in. This is a joke, Grixtal said between laughs. The little human thinks she can fight me. I outweigh her by 300 pounds. I am twice her height. I have killed champions who were stronger than entire human armies. It is not a joke, Hana said quietly. I understand the terms. Single. Combat. Winner takes all. General Vexmar looked confused rather than amused. Little human, do you understand what you are saying? This is not a game. This is real combat. People die in trial by combat. I understand, Hana replied. Park Doha grabbed her arm. Hana, no. This is madness. You cannot fight him. Look at the size difference. Hana gently removed his hand from her arm. The challenge has been made and accepted. According to Vorthak law, it cannot be withdrawn. Ambassador Kelthon nodded slowly. The human is correct. Once accepted, a trial by combat must proceed. But surely this is some kind of mistake. There is no mistake, Hana said firmly. Commander Thekvar shook his head. This is embarrassing. We wanted to fight your best warrior, not watch our champion accidentally kill a diplomat. Maybe we should call this off, suggested another Vorthak. Warrior. It would not be honorable to crush someone so obviously outmatched, but Grixtal raised his hand for silence. His laughter had stopped. Now he looked thoughtful. No, he said. The challenge was made fairly. It was accepted fairly. If the humans want to send a child to die for their honor, that is their choice. He looked down at Hana with something that might have been pity. I will try to make your death quick, little one. It is the least I can do. That is very kind of you, Hana replied without any trace of fear or anger. General Vexmar threw his hands up in frustration. This is ridiculous. How can we have a proper trial by combat when the result is so obvious? Where is the honor in this? The honor is in accepting the challenge, Hana said. Your culture values courage, does it not? Courage, yes, the general admitted. But also wisdom. And wisdom says you have no chance against our champion. Hana picked up her notebook and held it against her chest. Then it should be easy for him to win. The Vorthak looked at each other uncertainly. This was not how they had expected things to go. They had thought the humans would refuse the challenge or at least send their military commander to fight. Park. Doha made one last attempt. Hana, please let me fight instead. I am a soldier. I have combat training. Thank you, Hana said. But the challenge was made to humanity. Any human can accept it. I choose to accept it myself. Kim Ji-won's eyes were full of tears. This is suicide. You know that, right? Maybe, Hana agreed. But maybe not. Choi Min-ho slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. We all know how this will end. Why are you doing this? Hana looked at her three human companions. For the first time since the meetings began, she smiled. Because sometimes the only way to win a game is to change the rules, she said. General Vexmar declared that the combat would take place in the station's main arena the next day. Word spread quickly through Nexus Prime. Representatives from dozens of alien species made plans to attend. Most came expecting to see humanity's final humiliation. The few who knew about human history wondered if there might be more to this small woman than met the eye. That evening, Grixtal held court in the station's main bar. Other aliens bought him drinks and asked to hear stories of his greatest victories. He seemed to enjoy the attention. Tomorrow will not even be a real fight, he told his audience. It will be over in seconds. I almost feel bad about it. Then, why not refuse? Asked a traitor from the Centauri system. Because she accepted properly, Grixtal replied. And because I am curious. What kind of creature walks knowingly toward certain death without showing any fear? Across the station, the human team sat in their quarters. Park Doha was trying to contact Earth for new orders. Kim Ji-won was researching medical facilities on the station. Choi Min-ho was drinking coffee and staring at the wall. Hana sat by the window writing in her notebook. She had been writing for hours. What are you working on? Kim Ji-won asked. Observations, Hana replied without looking up. About what? About how Vorthak warriors move, how they think, how they fight. Kim Ji-won sat down next to her friend. Hana, I have to ask. Do you actually think you can win tomorrow? Hana stopped writing and looked out at the stars. I think, she said slowly, that everyone has been making assumptions about this fight. The Vorthak assume they know how it will go. You assume you know how it will go. Even I have been making assumptions. What kind of assumptions? Hana closed her notebook and stood up. Tomorrow we will find out which assumptions were correct, she said, and which ones were very, very wrong. The arena was packed with hundreds of spectators from across the galaxy. The circular fighting space in the center looked very small compared to the massive crowd around it. Bright lights shone down from above. The air hummed with excited voices, speaking in dozens of different languages. Most of the crowd had come to see what they thought would be a quick and brutal end to the peace talks. Betting was heavily favored toward Grixtal. Some bookmakers were not even taking bets on Hana because her odds of winning seemed so impossible. In the Vorthak viewing section, General Vexmar sat with his warriors. They looked confident and relaxed. This was just a formality before they could get back to the real business of conquest. The human section was much smaller and quieter. Park Doha sat with his hands clenched together. Kim Ji-won kept wiping tears from her eyes. Choi Min-ho stared at the fighting area with a grim expression. A loud horn sounded across the arena. The crowd fell silent. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species, announced the station's combat coordinator. Today we witness trial by combat between the Vorthak Empire and humanity. The outcome will determine the future relationship between these two peoples. Another horn sounded. A door opened on one side of the arena. Grixtal emerged like a walking mountain of armor and weapons. He stood over 7 feet tall and weighed more than 3 normal humans combined. His polished armor reflected the arena lights. A massive sword hung across his back. Smaller weapons covered his belt. The crowd cheered and roared approval. Grixtal raised both arms above his head and roared back. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. He began a traditional Vorthak war display. He drew his great sword and spun it around his body in complex patterns. The blade whistled through the air. He struck practice poses that showed off his incredible reach and strength. When he slammed the sword point into the arena floor, the metal deck bent and cracked around it. The crowd cheered louder. The Vorthak champion, Grixtal the undefeated, the announcer called out. The opposite door opened. Hana walked into the arena wearing simple human combat gear. Her outfit was lightweight and flexible, designed for movement rather than protection. She carried no visible weapons. Next to the massive Vorthak warrior, she looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong place. The crowd fell silent again. Many spectators seemed confused. They had heard about the size difference, but seeing it in person was shocking. Hana walked to the center of the arena. She moved smoothly and quietly. Her dark eyes were calm as she looked around at the thousands of faces staring down at her. The human champion, Lee Hana, the announcer said. His voice sounded uncertain, as if he was not sure this was really happening. The two fighters faced each other in the center of the arena. The difference in their sizes was almost comical. Grixtal's sword was longer than Hana was tall. Last chance to surrender, little human, Grixtal said. His voice was amplified, so the whole arena could hear. I do not want to hurt you if there is another way. There is no other way, Hana replied. Her voice was quiet but clear. We both understand what this fight means. Grixtal nodded slowly. Then may you die with honor. May the best warrior win, Hana said. The combat coordinator raised a flag, high above his head. The arena fell completely silent. Even the air systems seemed to stop making noise. The flag dropped. Grixtal did not charge immediately. He was the experienced fighter who knew not to underestimate any opponent, no matter how weak they appeared. He advanced slowly, his sword ready, watching for any tricks or hidden weapons. Hana stood perfectly still until he was almost close enough to reach her. Then she moved. She did not attack. She did not run away. She simply stepped to one side as Grixtal's first sword swing passed through the air where she had been standing. The crowd gasped. They had expected the fight to end with that first attack. Grixtal recovered quickly and swung again. This time he put more power behind the strike. His sword could have cut through steel. Again, Hana was not there when the blade arrived. She had moved just enough to avoid it. Stand still and fight, Grixtal growled, frustration creeping into his voice. I am fighting, Hana replied calmly. She continued to avoid his attacks with minimal movements. Each time, she seemed to know exactly where his weapon would be and exactly how to avoid it. She never moved more than necessary. She never wasted energy on dramatic dodges or flips. The crowd began to murmur with confusion. This was not the kind of fight they had expected to see. In the Vorthak section, Commander Thekvar leaned forward in his seat. What is she doing? He asked General Vexmar. I am not sure, the general replied. His confidence was starting to crack. But whatever it is, she cannot keep it up forever. Grixtal seemed to reach the same conclusion. He increased the pace of his attacks, trying to overwhelm his opponent with speed and power. His sword became a blur of deadly metal, but Hana continued to avoid every strike. More than that, she began to move closer to him instead of staying away. She slipped inside his guard, too close for his long sword to be effective. For the first time in the fight, she went on the attack. Her strikes were not powerful enough to damage his armor, but they were precisely placed. She hit specific points on his joints and nerve clusters. Grixtal stumbled slightly. The crowd gasped again. Impossible, Commander Thekvar whispered. Hana stepped back out of range before Grixtal could grab her. But now she had shown that she could actually hurt him, even if only a little. The Vorthak warrior's eyes narrowed with new respect and anger. You have some skill, little human. But skill will not save you from superior strength. He began using more advanced techniques. These were moves that had defeated champions from a dozen worlds. His sword work became more complex, more dangerous, more deadly. Hana met each new technique with perfect counters. She seemed to know what he was going to do before he did it. Her movements remained calm and controlled, while his became more frantic. How is this possible? Kim Ji-won whispered to Park Do-ha. She is actually holding her own against him. More than holding her own, Park Do-ha replied, amazement in his voice. She is making him work for every attack. In the arena, sweat was beginning to show on Grixtal's face. His breathing was getting heavier. Fighting in full armor with heavy weapons was exhausting work, especially when none of his attacks were connecting. Hana, meanwhile, showed no signs of tiredness. Her breathing remained steady. Her movements stayed fluid and precise. You cannot win by running away, Grixtal called out, loud enough for the crowd to hear. I am not running away, Hana replied. I am learning. Learning what? How you fight, how you think, how you move. She paused to avoid another massive sword swing. How you get tired. For the first time, doubt crept into Grixtal's expression. He was beginning to realize that this small human was not the easy victim he had expected. The crowd was on its feet now, cheering and shouting. What had started as an execution was turning into a real fight. Hana began to increase her own attacks. Her strikes were still not powerful, but they were becoming more frequent and more accurate. She targeted the same spots on his armor repeatedly, creating weak points and pressure. Grixtal tried to adjust his strategy. He attempted to trap her in corners or force her against the arena walls. But somehow she always found a way out. She moved like water, flowing around his attacks and finding openings he did not know existed. She is incredible, said an alien merchant in the crowd. I have never seen anyone fight like that. Neither have I, replied his companion, and I have seen warriors from 50 different worlds. The fight continued much longer than anyone had predicted. Grixtal's attacks were becoming slower and less precise. His armor, which had seemed like an advantage, was now weighing him down. Hana remained patient and focused. She continued to study him, learning his patterns, waiting for the right moment. That moment was coming soon. In the Vorthak section, General Vexmar was no longer confident. He was watching his greatest champion struggle against an opponent who should have been defeated in seconds. How is she doing this, he demanded. None of his warriors had an answer. They had never seen anything like it. On the arena floor, Grixtal was breathing hard. His movements were becoming predictable. His guard was dropping. Hana saw her chance and took it. The arena had become completely silent except for the sound of heavy breathing and metal scraping against metal. What had started as an expected execution had turned into something nobody could have imagined. Grixtal was exhausted. Sweat poured down his face and soaked through his armor. His massive sword felt heavier with each swing. For the first time in his life, he was in a fight that was not going his way. Hana moved around him like a ghost. Every time he thought he had her cornered, she slipped away. Every time he committed to a powerful attack, she was somewhere else. Worse, she kept hitting the same spots on his armor and joints. The small impacts were adding up. This is impossible, Commander Thekvar said again. He was gripping the arms of his chair so hard his claws were leaving marks in the metal. General Vexmar said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the arena floor where his undefeated champion was slowly losing a fight to someone a third his size. In the human section, Kim Ji-won was crying again, but now they were tears of hope instead of despair. She might actually win this, she whispered. Do not count on it yet, Park Do-ha warned. Grixtal is still dangerous. One good hit from him could end everything. But even as he spoke, it was clear that Grixtal was running out of options. His attacks were becoming wilder and more desperate. He was making mistakes that Hana was quick to punish. On the arena floor, Hana had begun her real attack. For most of the fight, she had been defensive, learning, and wearing down her opponent. Now she started to press forward. Her strikes were still not powerful enough to break through his armor directly, but she was not trying to break through it. She was targeting the weak spots where armor pieces joined together. She was hitting nerve clusters and pressure points that existed in Vorthak anatomy. How does she know where to hit? Asked a Vorthak, warrior in the stands. She studied us, Commander Thekvar realized with growing horror. She has been studying our people for years. She knows our biology better than we thought possible. Each of Hana's precise strikes caused Grixtal to stumble or hesitate. His left arm was not responding as well as before. His right leg was starting to drag slightly. The accumulation of small damages was adding up to serious problems. "Fight back," General Vexmar shouted from the stands. "Stop playing with her and finish this." But Grixtal was no longer playing. He was fighting for his life against an opponent who seemed to know his every weakness. Hana began to move faster now. She darted in and out of his guard like a striking snake. Each time she got close, she landed multiple hits before dancing away again. The crowd was going wild. They had come expecting to see a massacre. Instead, they were watching one of the most technical and skillful fights in arena history. "She is like water," said an alien philosopher in the crowd. "She flows around his strength and finds every crack in his defense." "No," corrected a military observer. "She is like a surgeon. Every move has a purpose. Every strike hits exactly where it needs to." Grixtal tried one last desperate strategy. He threw his sword aside and lunged forward with his bare hands, hoping to grab Hana and use his superior strength to crush her. It was exactly what Hana had been waiting for. As his huge hands reached for her, she dropped low and swept his legs. Already exhausted and off balance, Grixtal could not compensate. He started to fall. Hana helped him fall. Using his own momentum against him, she guided his massive body toward the arena floor. But she did not just let him fall. She made sure he fell in exactly the right way. Grixtal crashed to the ground with tremendous force. His armor cracked against the metal floor. But worse than that, he landed wrong. His leg twisted beneath him with a sound like breaking wood. The arena fell completely silent. Grixtal tried to get up. He pushed himself up on his hands and tried to stand. But his right leg would not support his weight. When he put pressure on it, he collapsed again with a cry of pain. Hana stood over him, breathing slightly harder than before, but otherwise unmarked. She had not taken a single hit during the entire fight. "Yield," she said quietly. Grixtal looked up at her from the floor. His face showed pain, shock, and something that might have been respect. "I cannot," he said. "A Vorthak warrior never yields." "Then, stay down," Hana replied. "The fight is over." She turned toward the crowd and raised one small hand. The arena erupted in cheers and screams. Beings from dozens of worlds were on their feet, shouting approval for what they had just witnessed. The Vorthak section, the silence was complete. General Vexmar stared at the arena floor where his greatest champion lay crippled and defeated. Commander Thekvar and the other warriors looked like they had seen a ghost. "This changes everything," Ambassador Kelthon said quietly. In the human section, Park Doha, Kim Jiwon and Choi Minho were hugging each other and shouting with joy. Their small colleague had just done the impossible. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to help Grixtal. His leg was badly damaged, probably beyond complete repair. His fighting days were over. The warrior who had never known defeat had been crippled by an opponent he had dismissed as harmless. Hana walked over to where he lay. "You fought well," she told him. "Your reputation was earned honestly." Grixtal looked up at her with new understanding. "What are you?" he asked. "I am what you did not expect," Hana replied. "I am a warrior who does not fight the way you thought warriors should fight." "How did you know?" he continued. "How did you know exactly where to hit, exactly how to move?" "I studied you," Hana said simply. "I watched recordings of all your fights. I learned your techniques, your patterns, your strengths and weaknesses. I prepared for this fight for months." Grixtal closed his eyes in shame. "I prepared for 5 minutes. I thought it would be easy." "That was your mistake," Hana agreed. "You assumed that bigger and stronger meant better. You forgot that intelligence is also a form of strength." The medical team began to carry Grixtal away on a stretcher. As they lifted him, he looked back at Hana one more time. "You are a true warrior," he said. "I was wrong about humans." "No," Hana replied. "You were wrong about me." The combat coordinator stepped forward to make the official announcement, but everyone in the arena already knew the result. The winner by defeat of opponent, representing humanity, Lihana. The crowd cheered again, but in the Vorthak section, the warriors sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about humans, about strength, about fighting, had just been turned upside down. General Vexmar stood slowly and began walking toward the arena exit. He had important calls to make. The entire Vorthak approach to dealing with humanity would have to be reconsidered. As he walked, he could not stop thinking about what he had just witnessed. A tiny human woman had defeated their finest warrior through preparation, intelligence, and skill. If this one small human could do that, what might humanity as a whole be capable of? For the first time in his long military career, General Vexmar was afraid.